You're listening to the Sex and Psychology Podcast, the sex ed you never got in school and won't get anywhere else. I am your host, Dr. Justin Lay-Miller. I am a social psychologist and research fellow at the Kinsey Institute and author of the book, Tell Me What You Want, The Science of Sexual Desire and How It Can Help You Improve Your Sex Life. Among people who are sexually active, oral sex is one of the most popular bedroom activities. But while most people say that it can be highly pleasurable, that doesn't mean that it always feels great. A quick online search pulls up countless posts from people reporting on bad experiences both giving and receiving oral sex. This is probably why there are tons of articles and guides out there for better oral. However, a lot of these guides are problematic because they try to reduce good oral sex down to one specific technique. And the problem with this is that different things feel good to different people, which is why one-size-fits-all sex advice never works. So in today's show, we're going to be talking all about oral sex by revisiting one of my favorite conversations from the archives. Specifically, we'll explore tips and techniques from the pleasure mechanics for being both a good giver and receiver. Some of the other topics we'll explore include what to do if you find yourself getting bored giving oral sex, what to do if you feel like oral sex has become a duty or obligation, how to make 69ing fun again, and so much more. My guests are Chris Maxwell Rose and Charlotte Mia Rose, co-creators of pleasuremechanics.com. They have devoted their lives to generating online resources to support folks in cultivating more erotic pleasure, joy, and connection. Known for their passionate compassion and game-changing reframes, Chris and Charlotte guide folks to expand their pleasure and erotic experiences through trainings and education. They also run a podcast called Speaking of Sex with the Pleasure Mechanics. This is going to be another fascinating conversation. Hi, Chris and Charlotte, and welcome to the Sex and Psychology Podcast.
Thank you so much for having us. I'm Chris.
I'm Charlotte.
And together we are the Pleasure Mechanics, and we've been reading your books, and I have your textbook on my shelf, so thank you so much for having us to join you in this conversation.
Yes, we're so delighted to be here.
Mm-hmm.
Well, thanks for joining me. And we go back quite a ways because I know I was a guest on your podcast some time ago when I had my book on sexual fantasies come out. So it's nice to connect again and to be on the other side of the table this time, having a chance to interview you.
Cheers.
Thank you.
So we're going to be talking all about oral sex today. And I think a good place to start when we're talking about sex tips, whether it's for oral or anything else, is with this common myth that there's just one perfect recipe or technique for any given sex act. Now, I've been a guest on many podcasts where I've been asked something along the lines of, what's the best way to perform cunnilingus? Or how do you give the best blowjob? And I always struggle with those questions because there isn't just one best way. And I know that's not what people want to hear. I mean, we all want sex to be easy, and we all want to know that one simple hack that's going to make us an amazing lover with every partner we have now and in the future. But unfortunately, it's not so simple. So talk to us a bit about this idea, this myth that there's just one recipe for perfect oral sex.
It's so true. You know, when so many of us, when we think about oral sex, a very limited scope of activity comes to mind. And when we are trying to experience and enjoy oral sex, often this limits us to a very kind of performative model of oral, where we are trying to give a great blowjob or give great head. You know, so when we set out, we had been teaching erotic touch for 20 years, and people kept asking for guidance towards more enjoyable oral. And we really had to step back and think about what this meant. Was it a matter of techniques? Was it a matter of attitude, communication? How do we kind of crack the nut of helping people enjoy oral more, right? Because it's something a lot of people struggle with. And what we came to was there's not one recipe for great oral, precisely because oral is so personal for each of us. We know that each of us like a different kind of touch, but when it comes to oral, it engages all of our senses kind of all at once. It's touch, it's mouthfeel, it's taste, it's scent, it's kind of the overwhelm of sensory experiences that makes it so specific and personal for each of us. And so we really have to focus on what your best oral is. What does that look like for you? Because the really intense kinds of oral we often see in pornography is not what a lot of people enjoy. And they're not given permission to enjoy oral on their own terms. So that's where we came to as pleasure mechanics, was really looking at what is the actual pleasure and enjoyment of oral sex. And when we really talked to our community and looked at it from a body work standpoint, we really came to this idea of what do you enjoy doing with your mouth? Let's start there. And from there, let oral be a very personal, deep expression of that particular erotic moment for you and your partner.
And that's where it can become so much more of an expression instead of a performance. Like, how do each of you want to feel? What is the experience that you want to have together when we get off script and stop just doing what we think is good and performing what we think of as good oral sex?
Right. And oral, I mean, you think of a kiss, and a kiss is never just a kiss, right? A world lives inside that kiss, and the same goes for oral sex. And so, how do we kind of blow open the so many puns, so many puns? The experience and kind of start interrupting the expectations. So, if you initiate oral and you're not in that mood for that one thing, you don't have to say no. You can offer what is honestly there to give in that moment.
And I think those are great answers. And you make a lot of great points in addition to some really fun puns as well. But, you're so right that oftentimes what you might see on screen doesn't necessarily translate in your own bedroom. What is fun to watch in porn might not feel as good in person. So, yeah, I think you make a really great point about how it's important to know what you want. And in your oral sex mastery course, you talk about why you need to get in touch with your own oral needs and preferences and desires. And you just made the case for why that's important. But can you maybe give us some practical tips on how to do an inventory of your own likes as a giver of oral sex, or maybe questions you should ask yourself so that start that process of self-discovery?
I mean, there's so many ways to start there. I feel like we know that we have such preferences around food and textures and sensations in our mouth. So it makes sense that that is relevant for all of our oral experiences. So starting to pay attention to what you genuinely enjoy going in your mouth, what textures, sensations, experiences do you already enjoy, and what do you really not like? And starting to be honest with yourself and giving yourself space to name your dislikes, then we can kind of start getting in more honest relationship with our mouth as a space of eroticism. Because in truth, many of us have not really had a strong erotic relationship with our mouth. And it's something, or wherever we're at, we can build and cultivate that relationship so that we can eroticize it even more.
I remember listening to friends argue about butter, and one just loved butter, and the other thought butter was the most awful mouthfeel. And they were trying to convince one another back and forth, and we all just kind of broke down laughing because you can't convince someone to love butter like you love butter. But we can come into more authentic expression with our mouths. And the key is finding, that golden Venn diagram slice, however narrow or wide it is, about how you and the people you're playing with, making love with, enjoy mouths being used, right? Just like touch. Do you like deep kneading strokes or featherlight strokes? How do you enjoy using your mouth, and what is your partner interested in receiving? We need to communicate to find that. And what are the conversations there? Some of it is oral conversations, meaning verbal conversations. And some of it is kind of exploration, playing with something like a kiss up and down the neck, onto the chest and breasts. Like, how does your partner like being kissed? Let's explore the whole range. Let's explore the whole range and see what it evokes, right? So many of us have yearnings that have not yet been named, whether that's I want to be bitten really hard and I don't know how to ask for that, or I want to lick in a very specific place that feels a little taboo and I'm worried about my partner's reaction. That whole conversation can open up however gradually you need to do it, right? We have some couples that will listen to a podcast episode and then walk their dog every Thursday and have a little like debrief and what did this podcast open up for you? And you can make a practice out of talking more about sex way out of the bedroom, right? Where there's maybe less charge and less at stake as you get more honest.
Yeah, and that's great advice. And I often advise people, when you want to talk about especially problem areas or other issues when it comes to sex, doing that in the heat of the moment is not the best time to bring that up. So, yeah, finding those safer, more neutral places where you can discuss things like this is really important. Why do long-term couples stop having great sex? Because no one teaches us how to keep desire alive once the honeymoon phase ends. But Beducated does. Beducated features over 150 expert-led courses designed to deepen your connection and put the spice back into your intimate life. For example, check out their course on tantric date nights, which will help you to reignite the spark and take intimacy to new levels. This course will teach you a range of techniques for giving your partner out-of-this-world pleasure, whether they have a penis or a vulva. One of the things that I think is really great about this course is that it provides a whole series of date night ideas where you explore pleasure in different ways, and it walks you through exactly what to do, no guesswork required. Another great thing about this course is that it teaches you to improve your sexual communication skills, including how to share your fantasies and ask for what you really want. Say goodbye to your dormant sex life and hello to a sex life reboot with Beducated. Beducated is where toe-curling pleasure meets expert-backed education. Get 50% off the yearly pass by using my last name, Laymiller, as the coupon code. Try Beducated risk-free with a 14-day money-back guarantee. If you want to transform the way you describe your sex life from "it's just fine" to "we're having the best sex ever," Beducated is just what you need. Check the show notes for the link and be sure to use my last name to get your discount. So we talked about, how it's important to do this inventory of your own likes, figure out what it is that you enjoy when it comes to oral sex. But it's important to recognize that for some people, they find that, there are those turnoffs, those roadblocks that kind of get in the way of their enjoyment. And some of those might come up in the process of doing this inventory. So for example, there might be a certain smell or taste that just really turns you off. Or you might be unsure whether your partner likes what you're doing or if they're enjoying it. And so that leads you to get distracted and kind of like gets you stuck in your head, or your jaw might get tired, or your neck might get sore. I'm reminded of this episode of Curb Your Enthusiasm where Larry is talking about how, there's only two ways you can injure your neck, and it's either through a car accident or cunnilingus. And, I don't think he's right in saying that like those are the only two ways you can injure your neck, but yeah, your neck can get sore and can hurt from performing oral sex. We also know that people can get bored because, if you feel like you've been doing it for a long time, it can just, sort of take you out of the moment. So can you give us any tips on, how do you deal with issues like boredom or roadblocks that might be getting in the way of your ability to enjoy performing oral sex?
We're both kind of rubbing our hands together because there's so much there. I want to start from the kind of end of your question and work backwards. Things like boredom can come from doing it the same way all the time, right? So immediately in my head, I was like, what happens if we switch positions and go from, the reclined receiving oral position that so many of us are familiar with to something like face sitting? That will capture your attention pretty quickly to try a position you've never tried before, and it gives your partner's neck the chance to relax if they can just lie back as you slowly descend upon them. And something like face sitting, whether it's queening or more of an active style irumatio kind of blowjob, there are styles of oral sex that many of us have never had the freedom and permission to explore. So some of boredom is just playing with the new and new varieties of oral, but it's also about paying attention to the pleasures that are already there waiting to be savored. And for some of us, boredom comes because we get overwhelmed with sensation or we get underwhelmed and there's not quite enough sensation to take us over the edge and we get stuck on a plateau, and then oral is just not quite as all consuming as we want it to be. And so in the course, we deal with both of these extremes, the underwhelm and the overwhelm that can happen while receiving. And as we get more specific with the roadblocks, we can apply our tools, right? And so if it's underwhelm, there's all sorts of ways of adding layers of arousal, whether that's self touch, asking your partner to use their hands in what we call manuoral, right? That amazing symphony of mouth and hands together. But also, you can touch yourself or activate fantasy. What can you be doing in your head, right? And you know a lot about this of the psychogenic arousal that is available to us all the time, or just by paying attention to the details, like open your eyes. So many of us receive with closed eyes. What happens if we open our eyes and behold our lover's gorgeous body as they are going down on us, or really anchor into some sensory details? So these are all skills that we lay out, but I think for people to hear, right, like whatever your roadblock is, you're not alone in it. And there are tools. And there are tools available to us so we don't have to feel stuck in our sexual experience or frustrations. And that brings me to the first part of your question. I want to throw it to Charlotte about specific icks. Because in that inventory, sometimes those things that ick us out are really like a sensory detail that no matter what we do, like that's just always going to cause ick. And what then?
And these are so specific. When we discover what our specific icks may be, then we can sometimes problem solve. And there can be a surprisingly simple solution that this can shift and unlock a whole new experience of oral play and pleasure. And that is so exciting. But we do have to be honest about what our specifics are.
Yeah, and it's not always what you think, like smell, right? Some people are worried about how they smell. A lot of people are sensitive to chemical smells. And so if you really go overboard with soaps and, preparation, sometimes your partner might actually be averse to the smell of your soap, not to you at all. And if you can get honest in that conversation, you can prepare differently and meet each other where you're at. Or your partner might not love the smell of your scent and funk after you've been hit in the gym, or they might get really turned on by it. And you don't know until you talk about it.
Right. So this reminds me of a post on Reddit I saw the other day. This guy was talking about how he really likes to perform oral sex on other men. He's a gay guy. And he said that he actually finds it hard to enjoy it much because people are too clean, right? And he's like, there's no taste, there's no smell, like there's none of that to it. And it was really fascinating to read the comments on this because some people are like, ew, like why would you want any kind of taste or smell? And then other people are like, yeah, I can relate. Like the overly clean, like especially chemical kinds of scents or things actually get in the way of arousal. And so, that comment thread alone just sort of highlights all of this diversity in terms of what it is that people want or enjoy about something like oral sex. Because as you describe, it's this very multi-sensory thing. It's not just about, the act of, putting your mouth on genitals. There's like so much more to it.
And those individual preferences often are so deeply emotionally laden. Things like, do you like your head being touched while going down? Some people having their head touched in any way is very triggering. They feel controlled, they feel manipulated, and they don't want their head touched at all. Other people, like myself, I shave my head because I love being touched and stroked and held very firmly. And that makes me feel less alone when I'm a little further away from my lover. I love feeling that connection of their hands. So, what are your preferences and what do they mean to you, right? As we unpack this, this is how oral gets to this place of this deeply personal expression of both giving and receiving care and attention and lavishment. We worked with one couple around the scent issue, and he bought her a bar of soap that smelled and tasted delicious to him, that made her feel fresh and clean. And they met in their need of how they wanted to meet there. And that was such a beautiful, tender, romantic thing ultimately that got them over this roadblock that had been kind of haunting them. Her not feeling clean enough and him feeling ick from her chemical products. How beautiful to be able to find a solution that meets both of your needs. And that's what, so much of erotic communication is about. It's about being able to express yourself honestly and be able to hear someone else's truth and not take it personally or react like it's always about you, right? People's icks, especially, are often about their sensory needs and processes, and so often is not about you at all. And they're doing their best to meet you as a lover. So, how do we meet in the middle?
I think those are all really important points. Now, since we've been talking about the icks and roadblocks, I want to talk about 69ing for a second. So I've been rewatching Sex and the City lately, and I heard this line on an episode the other day that went something like, no one has enjoyed the 69 position since 1969, with the implication being that 69ing is overrated and no one really likes it. And anecdotally, I've heard from a lot of people who share that view. They're like, 69ing sounds great in theory. It looks really hot in porn. But whenever I try and do it, it's always like super uncomfortable. Like we can't find the positioning to work in a way that we actually enjoy, and my neck hurts, or, it just never seems to work for them. So what do you think about that? And do you have any tips for making 69ing great again?
It's so divisive, the number 69. And I think, again, this often comes from what are our assumptions and preloaded expectations about this sex act? And then how do we kind of excavate those assumptions and expand our repertoire? And one of the variations, in the course, we cover 69 3 ways. And one of the variations came right from our community in the massive oral survey we did. And it's called the lazy 69, which is just taking 69 and making it sideline. Because for a lot of us, we can actually support our weight and focus on giving head and receive the sensations all at the same time. That's a lot to ask of us. And so if we just go to sideline and make it lazy, what would that feel like? So it's not like vigorous, it's not super intense, but we're going to recline and relax into this together. That's a variation to try. Another variation is to go all in and bring your hands into it and use positioning props and find the ways that you fit specifically. All bodies fit together in different ways. And for some of us, like being on top will be really important so we can control our head and penetration. For others, we need to relax and lie back. You might need a pillow or a prop to get comfy, but make this a game, a mission to see how does 69 work for you. Forget what you think you know about it. But the other thing here is the overwhelm, the dual focus of attention on giving and receiving at the same time is one reason people kind of get overwhelmed with 69ing. And in that overwhelm, feel less. And that's really important to pay attention to sometimes when we kind of hit a capacity with what we can focus and pay attention to. Our whole system kind of goes into overwhelm and we can numb out or get anxious even. It's when excitement becomes anxiety because there's just too much to pay attention to.
And so that's a moment where a pause and a slowing down just for a moment so you can integrate all of the sensation and experience and then perhaps return to it or perhaps shift it up. But that is one of those moments where the boredom can show up out of overwhelm.
And I want to say roll around with it. We often get static in our ideas of things like positioning, but if we allow things to be a little more fluid and roll around in it, you can be sitting on someone's face, sucking their cock, and then come up for air and just receive for a few minutes, right? Just take it in, use your hands to stroke them. And so they don't feel like that connection is broken. And then when you feel ready, dive back in for more. We never have to endure. And this is something that came from our massage lineage is do not endure discomfort in your quest for pleasure, right? We can shift things up. We can make adjustments. We can take pauses and not lose the moment.
Yeah. And, I think that is an important point with something like 69ing is it doesn't mean you have to be like continuously nonstop providing and receiving oral sex. Like you can take a break, like that's okay. But also, in talking about something like overwhelm, it's important to recognize that for some people, they kind of need that sensory overload to kind of get out of their head and really be in the moment. But for other people, having that sensory overload is just like too much, and it can interfere with their ability to stay aroused. So yeah, this all goes back to knowing what your own needs are, what your partner's needs are, and making sure that you're pursuing sexual activity, oral and otherwise, in ways that work for both of you or all of you if there's more than two people involved. Hey guys, have you ever wanted more from your orgasms? Then you're going to want to check out Load Boost from BB Health. Load Boost is a supplement designed to improve the taste, volume, and overall health of your semen. This doctor-formulated supplement can help to enhance your orgasms and pleasure and support your fertility at the same time. VB Health takes quality seriously. Made in the USA and based in Denver, their products are produced in an FDA-registered facility. They even share their third-party lab results publicly because they value trust and transparency. This isn't anything like the junk they're selling in a gas station. Thousands of guys from all across the US and 45 different countries have already tried Load Boost, and over 88% of the reviews are 4 or 5 stars from verified buyers. Elevate your performance with Load Boost. You just might become someone's new favorite performer. Learn more and get yours at loadboost.com. Visit loadboost.com and use code Justin for 10% off, or click the link in the show notes. Now, in sexual relationships, oral sex is something that for many people feels like a duty or an obligation. Like it's something that they feel like they have to do as opposed to something they really want to do or enjoy. So, for example, I know and have heard from some couples who say, oral sex is just something I provide my partner on birthdays and anniversaries and like special occasions. Like I don't like it, but it's something I feel like I have to do because I know they wanted it. And so I'm like very reluctantly giving it out on these like special occasions. Now, for someone who might feel that way, how do you go about transforming oral sex from feeling like this obligation into something that you actually love or enjoy doing?
Yeah, I think it's a really common experience, actually. And it is hard to really want something when you haven't had full choice around being able to have choice around if you want to offer it or not. I think it's so assumed in a lot of relationships that it should be there. And because a lot of us haven't developed this erotic relationship with our own mouths, we maybe haven't figured out and explored what we actually genuinely enjoy. So it does often come from this place of obligatory or transactional sex. So I feel like to start with that, can we give ourselves permission, engage in self-consent and say that we don't have to offer up sex of any form that we don't want to? But can we look at what we really do enjoy? Is there anything we like offering? And can we just do some more of that and let ourselves not do what we don't want to do? And then have some curiosity and begin to explore a little bit more of what we might actually enjoy and kind of slowly allow ourselves to expand our sexual repertoire and experience through gentle curiosity and like allowing ourselves to return to play instead of performance. Because the truth is, enthusiasm for oral sex cannot be faked or rushed, but we can, through exploration, discover an emergent enthusiasm or an emergent eagerness. Mm-hmm. And from there, keep growing our genuine enjoyment. Mm-hmm. So I think it's a multi-pronged experience of letting yourself say no and then explore and discover what you genuinely enjoy and let that grow and build.
Yeah, I wanted to ask the partner how they felt about those birthday blowjobs, right? And we heard a lot of this from our community about the experience of dutiful oral, and it really often breaks down one's confidence, actually. Like it's not a gift to receive often.
Because it's felt. People can often feel that it is not given with genuine enthusiasm.
When what we actually want to feel is like that ripe, perfect peach ready to be devoured, right? To feel wanted and to feel our partner's enthusiasm. For me, I'd rather feel that no matter what it looks like, it doesn't have to be contingent on an activity or a script. And from there, as Charlotte said, things can build in some really strange and interesting and artistic ways, right? There's so much more possible and available to us than our kind of scripts allow often. And one of the reasons, we are queer podcasters speaking to a mostly straight audience, and what we hear all the time, and I'm imagining you get this response too, is, as queers, we offer a lot of freedom and permission to get off script and really seek out what speaks to us as individual erotic creatures. We are also unique and beautiful and special. And I want to know how each of my lovers wants to be taken, right? I want to know how they like to receive my mouth, and I want them to feel what I authentically want to give in that moment. And knowing that that moment will change again and again and again gives us freedom to play and explore and discover.
So true.
But so much getting off script. I'm thinking about people just using like their mouth on the tip of a cock, for instance, and allowing themselves to use their hands more instead of just thinking that they have to use their whole mouth up and down. Like so many people in our community said they actually didn't enjoy receiving deep throating, which I thought was interesting information for people to know. Again, this idea of it doesn't have to look the way that we think. And so playing with what we enjoy and having those conversations.
One couple said, I never give because I hate deep throating. I always gag and that makes me feel ill. And the partner said, oh, I don't actually like that at all. All I want is my frenulum licked and kissed. And they met at that perfect shining crown of a moment and have been enjoying all this oral play. And so it's those kinds of conversations where you can have the aha. Or if he had said, deep throating is actually really important to me, we have toys for that. We have tools for that to help with that sense of deep penetration while she really works the head, right? So this is an approach that makes no one wrong for feeling how they feel or what their experience is. You're not broken. You just are unique in who you are. And also in this point of your erotic development, right? We all change and grow. And things like injury and illness can create seasons for our sexuality that can be unexpected and that will inevitably change again. And so meet where you're at.
Yeah. And that's one of the things, like when it comes to sexual communication, and the sad part about the fact that so many people don't communicate about sex is that they will often engage together sexually and they're both doing what they think the other person wants. And so they're not getting what they want. They don't really enjoy it. And the other person is not getting what they want either, right? Because they're just trying to please the other person. And so that's where you need to talk about this and find a way to uncover what your preferences and pleasures are. And so, we've talked a lot about how it's important to know, like as a giver of oral sex, what it is that you enjoy, but it's also at the same time important to know as a receiver, like what do you like and enjoy there? And just as there are roadblocks that can get in the way of giving oral sex, there are also roadblocks that can get in the way of receiving oral sex, where, some of the same issues can arise where you might have those anxieties or concerns about how do you smell or taste, or you might even get bored receiving oral sex. I know that's hard for some people to imagine, but if it's just not doing it for you, if it's not tapping into what your pleasures are, you can get bored or you can get distracted. So yeah, it's really important to know, like as a receiver of oral sex as well, like what do you like and enjoy? And I think for some people who think that they don't like oral sex, it might be because they've just never really gotten in touch with what it is that they would enjoy or what turns them on about oral sex.
Totally. And part of the intimacy of oral sex is to do with its vulnerability. And it is particularly vulnerable. And somebody's sort of down low and you're up high, so there's more room to be distracted. There's this question of worthiness that comes up for a lot of people of like, are they worthy to receive somebody's full attention and focus? And that can really get in the way of the enjoyment and is a larger question to look at, but really interrupts and contributes to pleasure anxiety.
Yeah, and the number one thing we heard from receivers was, I'm not sure if my partner wants to be there. Wouldn't they rather be doing something else, anything else, rather than licking me? And meanwhile, givers are like, all I want to do is give. And so we have this knot. And, this is where we got to that idea of how do we get to mutual enthusiasm that has to be through a lot of raw honesty and believing one another's truth, believing your partner when they say, there's nowhere in the world I'd rather be than between your thighs. There's an intimacy in that, and there's a vulnerability, but on the other side of that, what is there for you? And as receivers, right, I think so much of it is what needs to be true for you to enjoy oral sex? What are the conditions you need? For some of us, oral sex is a great warm-up. But for a lot of us, we enjoy it more when we're already aroused. So where is it in your sequencing? Do you like it before or after something? How does it relate to kissing and penetration? For some people, they don't want to make out after they've given oral sex. And so they kind of hesitate and like, you need to talk about this. For other people, they love tasting one another on their lips, right? So it's like, what is true for you and how do you make it work? What needs to be true for you to enjoy oral? And if we start from that question, we can get to a lot of raw honesty.
Very true. Now, I have one more question for you about oral. So, something that you say in your oral course is that there is one essential factor that can make oral sex great or not. And we may have already covered it, but if not, what is that one essential factor?
Can't cover it enough.
We asked our community, and we had hundreds and hundreds of responses, and they all agreed that enthusiasm is the main ingredient for phenomenal oral sex. And we are so technique focused in our culture. And I think it's so interesting and illuminating that that is genuinely what people want to feel. Like
whether in a kiss or in a blowjob or in full body oral lavishment, to know that your partner is unabashedly into it and is not holding back. That enthusiasm is felt. And I think that's one of the biggest pleasures of oral from both ends, is feeling that unbridled enthusiasm for devourment, whatever that looks like for you.
And I got to say, that's not surprising to me from the standpoint of somebody who's a sexual fantasy researcher, because so much of what is in our fantasy is like, if you're looking at the core erotic themes that are there, it's about feeling desired and wanted and validated and sexually confident and competent. And so having an enthusiastic sexual partner meets all of those needs, right? It makes you know unequivocally that your partner is into you, that they want you, that they're enjoying it, that you're a skilled lover. And so, yeah, I think it's about so much more than enthusiasm. It's about what that means in terms of how it makes us feel in that situation. So, yeah, enthusiasm doesn't surprise me as being one of the essential ingredients to great oral sex and just great sex in general.
Yeah. And then how do we make one another feel it? Because so often couples will have this conversation, be like, of course I'm into you, I'm with you, aren't I? No, make me feel it. And some of those things are things like spontaneity, initiate oral, make me believe that you want me right now, praise and worship. We can't get enough of praise and worship, but only in the ways that we like to receive praise and worship. So let's get more specific there, right? Some of us need verbal affirmation. Others need to feel it with hands. How do we convey our enthusiasm as part of how we love one another?
Well, I love all of that, and I'm really looking forward to continuing our conversation in the next episode and talking all about intimate touch.
Let's do it. Cheers.
Thank you so much for this amazing conversation, Charlotte and Chris. It was a pleasure to have you both here. Can you please tell my listeners where they can go to learn more about you and your work and maybe sign up for your online courses?
Start with our free course at pleasuremechanics.com/free. Use the links in the show notes. Don't do social media because social media is censoring. You can find us at our forever home at pleasuremechanics.com. I'm Chris.
I'm Charlotte.
And we are the Pleasure Mechanics. Thank you so much for allowing us this conversation today.
Mm-hmm.
Well, thank you again for your time. I really appreciate having you here. Thank you for listening. To keep up with new episodes of this podcast, visit my website, Sex and Psychology, at sexandpsychology.com, or subscribe on your favorite platform, where I hope you'll take a moment to rate and review the show. If you listen on Apple Podcasts, please consider becoming a Sex and Psychology Premium subscriber to enjoy ad-free listening for just $3.99 a month. You can also follow me on social media for daily sex research updates. I'm on Blue Sky and X at Justin Lehmiller and Instagram at Justin J. Lehmiller. Also, be sure to check out my book, Tell Me What You Want. Thanks again for listening. Until next time.